Mass wasting is kind of a funny word that geologists use to mean rock slides, landslides, and other movement of land. So we're going to look at the different kinds of mass wasting today and talk about what causes it and what characteristics you can see when you look at mass wasting events. Let's start with this picture you might have seen on the internet a couple of years ago. Do you think that this homeowner regrets putting his house where he did? We'll look at this rockfall in a few minutes. So categories of mass wasting. First of all, there's rockfalls. That's where individuals or groups of rock fall, but they don't slide together any significant distance. A landslide is a very rapid transport over relatively long distance, and they're often dramatically destructive. This landslide is in Hong Kong. There is also something called slump, which is shown on below the word slump, where a large piece of the hillside drops down and slides as a large hunk of land. Usually there's some sort of rotation involved in the position of the rock material as it leaves, and so there's often a concave surface that it's sliding on, and it leaves a scarp behind. On the left you see creep. This is where soil moves down the slope very slowly, maybe a centimeter or so a year. You don't see any discrete planes that it moves on, but you can see wrinkles or other characteristics that show that the soil is actually creeping. A debris flow is a mixture of sediment and water that moves very rapidly downstream, and it can be quite destructive. Mudflows, like the one on the left, happen after very heavy rains. This is from Venezuela. And lahars, like the one on the right, form as mudflows or debris flows from volcanoes. Lahars from Mount St. Helens travel up to 90 miles an hour. The water in that kind of a landslide comes from snow and that melts during the eruption and joins in with a river with a lot of sediment and ash and other volcanic materials. So a lahar is a very particular kind of debris flow. Now, what do you think causes these trees to grow with a bent trunk? Well, of course, trees are going to grow straight up if they can, so something must be pushing them downslope, and in this case, it's creep. And it happens slowly enough that it doesn't kill the trees, but over time, this trunk gets bent. So that's one way you can tell that there's slope failure here. Debris flows are very common when wildfires have stripped the hillside of vegetation. So winter rains following a summer wildfire season can produce debris flows like this one from California in 2003. This is a picture of a landslide in Alaska that was triggered by an earthquake. Landslides can be set off by any of a number of things, but earthquakes are one common way that landslides get triggered. This poor engineering, poor design, poor construction caused this slump failure. This is a slump on the edge of a road that has torn up this road on the California coast. And this rock fall from Italy in 2014. The annual cycle of freezing and thawing of ice in fractures in the rock on the cliff above the house eventually lead to large boulders being breaking away. This boulder came down and actually crashed through the barn, missed the house proper, and fortunately nobody was hurt. But if the landowner had been paying attention, he should have known this was a hazard. Look at that great big boulder in the arbor. It's been there a long time. Now, what do you think this is? A very dry landscape. You see a surface and a scarp, so this is slump, and maybe a little bit of creep. No vegetation. This is actually on Mars. Same kinds of processes that we see on Earth, we can sometimes see on other planets as well. Now, if you're contemplating buying a house in California along this place, you see there's a house there on the ridge. What are some of the red flags that you might see? Well, for example, down at the water level you see a wave-cut terrace, but on top of that, a whole lot of rocks and some slumping land. So how do you think those rockfall got on top of that wave-cut terrace? Well, it fell from the hillside above. It might not be the very best place to have a house.